Hello everyone. Well, today is a day that we're going to do a little bit of studying. So this is going to be a longer video than what I typically do because I want to walk you completely through a book. Today I will share with you a quick walkthrough on how I translate the Bible. And I'm going to use the Book of Ruth because that's a book that I believe is just a phenomenal love story from God. It gives us glimpses into so many different elements. And so I'm going to read it, give you some of the commentary. I am using, if you were looking at a previous video of mine, the study Bible that I use is the Chronological Study Bible. And I use that because it helps me get some understanding about where the historical facts are in the Bible. And there's different versions of that. So I'm reading from the New Living Translation of the Bible. I'll read some of the highlights from it, read the story, and then give you my translation. Okay. So the story of Ruth is a period between judges. And it begins like this. In the days when the judges ruled in Israel, a severe famine came upon the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah left his home and went to live in the country of Moab, taking his wife and his 2 sons with him. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. Their 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in the land of Judah. And when they reached Moab, they settled there. Then Elimelech died, and Naomi was left with her 2 sons. The 2 sons married Moabite women. One married a woman named Orpah, and the other a woman named Ruth. But about 10 years later, both Mahlon and Chilion died. This left Naomi alone without her 2 sons or her husband. Then Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had blessed his people in Judah by giving them good crops again. So Naomi and her daughter-in-laws got ready to leave Moab to return to her homeland. With her 2 daughter-in-laws, she set out from the place where she had been living, and they took the road that would lead them back to Judah. But on the way, Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, "Go back to your mother's homes, and may the Lord reward you for your kindness to your husbands and to me. May the Lord bless you with the security of another marriage." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they all broke down and wept. "No," they said, "we want to go with you to your people." But Naomi replied, "Why should you go on with me? Can I give birth to other sons who would grow and be with you? No, my daughters, return to your parents' homes, for I am too old to marry again. And even if it were possible, and I were to get married tonight and bear sons, then what? Would you wait for them to grow up and refuse to marry someone else? No, of course not, my daughters. Things are far more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord himself has raised a fist against me." And again they wept together, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. But Ruth clung tightly to Naomi. "Look," Naomi said to her, "your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. You should do the same." But Ruth replied, "Don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever your God will be my God, and your people will be my people. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us." But when Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said nothing more. So the 2 of them continued on their journey. When they came to Bethlehem, the entire town was excited by their arrival. "Is it really Naomi?" they wondered. "Don't call me Naomi," she responded. "Instead, call me Mara, for the Almighty has made life very bitter for me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me home empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has caused me to suffer, and the Almighty has sent such tragedy upon me?" So Naomi returned to Moab, accompanied by her daughter-in-law Ruth, the young Moabite woman. They arrived in Bethlehem in late spring at the beginning of the barley harvest. So I haven't read that, and I need the glasses to see, but it's kind of difficult to see the screen just when it's for reading. So in reading that, you have to understand a little bit about the history. I was sharing before, and knowing the history of the time period can help you translate it. Israel was where Naomi was from, and the people of Israel were where God was housing them, containing them in a fruitful, blessed place. But they had gone through let's say, a depression. So their economic downfall caused Naomi's husband to decide, well, we need to go to a better place. Naomi, being a dutiful wife, went along with her husband and her 2 sons. And when they left home, they ended up in a situation that wasn't much better than before. Some of the lessons that I learned when I was reading the Book of Ruth is, one, be clear about where God has you. Israel was where God's people were supposed to be. So when you are in the moment, and this is why I share the 3 elements: relationship with yourself, relationship with others, and relationship with the higher being. That higher being for me is Jesus Christ. And when I am following an order and a direction that I know God gave me, even when it looks bleak, I need to stay put, because worse things can happen. You've heard the saying, it looks greener on the other side. Well, for them at this time, it looked greener on the other side. But it's only greener on the other side because there's some other stuff that's happening. My grandmother has another word for that, but I'm not going to use that terminology today. But I want you to know one of the principles out of this is go where God says. There were people that were in Israel, and it was the same experience that they were having that Naomi and her husband had, but they stayed. But here's another element about this book, and this is just chapter 1. I haven't gone into the other chapter yet. When she went away, she brought back someone that was different than her, someone that did not know her culture, someone that wasn't present in her environment. Ruth returned because wherever you are, when you are clear about who you are, you can share that love and excitement and joy to others. There's something special about Naomi that Ruth clung to. And here's another element I want to bring to your attention. In the Israel environment, Hebrews had specific meanings to their names. Naomi's name means happy, glad, joyful. So when she returned and her people said, oh, it is Naomi, she said, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because Mara means bitter. My great-grandmother taught me a long time ago, when you name a child, give a child a name of meaning, because they live into their name. They grow into their name. Their name is a precursor to some element and aspect of who they are in existence. My name is Tanya. My middle name is Esther. Tanya means princess in Russia, and Esther is a queen of the Bible. So when you take out just the name, I am left with Princess Queen, which is a phenomenal thing. So I had to learn to be appreciative of my name. I had to learn to operate in the element of who I am. And sometimes when you aren't in an environment that lets you truly grow into who you are, you forget. But your name was supposed to be a reminder of who you are. I had to take a moment to reset myself, to remember who I am. I am a princess. I am a queen, because God said so. And I had to learn to operate in that. Naomi forgot her name. And because of that, she walked through bitterness, which was not her character. So those are a few principles that I gained out of chapter 1. Let's read chapter 2 and gain some more insight from that. And so did you know there's a whole lot more that can be read, which is why rereading the Bible and rereading different chapters of it always gives you another element, another twist, another aspect to look at. So let's read chapter 2. Now there was a wealthy and influential man in Bethlehem named Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi's husband, Elimelech. One day Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go out into the harvest fields to pick up the stalks of grain left behind by anyone who is kind enough to let me do it." Naomi replied, "All right, my daughter, go ahead." So Ruth went out to gather the grain behind the harvesters. And as it happened, she found herself working in the field that belonged to Boaz, the relative of her father-in-law, Elimelech. While she was there, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you," he said. "The Lord bless you," the harvesters replied. Then Boaz asked the foreman, "Who is that young woman over there? Who does she belong to?" And the foreman replied, "She is the young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi. She asked me this morning if she could gather grain behind the harvesters. She has been hard at work ever since, except for a few minutes' rest in the shelter." Boaz went over and said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter, stay right here with us. When you gather grain, don't go to any other fields. Stay right here behind the young women working in my field. See which part of the field they are harvesting and then follow them. I have warned the young men not to treat you roughly, and when you are thirsty, help yourself to water they have drawn from the well." Ruth fell at his feet and thanked him warmly. "What have I done to deserve such kindness?" she asked. "I am only a foreigner." "Yes, I know," Boaz replied. "But I also know about everything you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of her husband. I have heard how you left your father and mother in your own land and live here among complete strangers. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done." "I hope I continue to please you, sir," she replied. "You have comforted me by speaking so kindly to me, even though I am not one of your workers." At mealtime, Boaz called to her, "Come over here and help yourself to some food. You can dip your bread in our sour wine." So she sat with his harvesters, and Boaz gave her roasted grain to eat. She ate all she wanted and still had some left over. When Ruth went back to work again, Boaz ordered the young men, "Let her gather grain right among the sheaves without stopping, and pull out some heads of barley from the bundles and drop them on purpose for her. Let her pick them up and don't give her a hard time." So Ruth gathered the barley there all day, and when she beat out the grain that evening, it filled an entire basket. She carried it back into town and showed it to her mother-in-law. Ruth also gave her the roasted grain that was left over from her meal. "Where did you gather all this grain today?" Naomi asked. "Where did you work? May the Lord bless the one who helped you." So Ruth told her mother-in-law about the man whose fields she had worked in. She said, "The man I worked with today, his name is Boaz." "May the Lord bless him," Naomi told her daughter-in-law. "He is showing his kindness to us, as well as to your dead husband. That man is one of our chosen relatives, one of our family redeemers." Then Ruth said, "What's more, Boaz even told me to come back and stay with his harvesters until the entire harvest is complete." "Good," Naomi exclaimed. "Do as he said. Stay with his young women right there the whole harvest. You might be harassed in others' fields, but you'll be safe with him." So Ruth worked alongside the women in Boaz's fields and gathered grain with them until the end of the barley harvest. Then she continued working with them through the wheat harvest in early summer, and all the while she lived with her mother-in-law. So, with that, chapter 2 gives us a little more insight about what is called the Redeemer, the kinsman Redeemer. When you learn a little bit more about the story of the Bible, you gain an understanding about who Jesus is. And this book gives a precursor of what that is to us in believing in Jesus Christ. Jesus was also the Redeemer. Ruth was a stranger. She was not one of the ones that was called the children of God, which were the people of Israel. But foreigners can be called into the house of God as well. So Ruth got the opportunity to be a part of God's kingdom. As a foreigner, she was shown kindness. As a foreigner, she was shown understanding. She was given an opportunity to be safe. We are in an environment now where there are those that are foreign to our country that aren't always given a place at the table. God intends for us to be kind to others, to be caring to others, to provide help where help is needed. Ruth had nothing. And because she was a stranger in an environment where nobody knew her, when you aren't known by some, you are treated less than kind. You are treated in a horrible situation. But he showed her kindness. One of the lessons that I got from this story was be kind to everyone that you meet. And there are certain individuals that God will put in your world that will give you a blessing to help you through your process. I had people when I was trying to reset my life that God had placed in my world to show me kindness. And I learned that the same way Boaz heard about Ruth before he even met her, how you operate carries weight. Operate with excellence. All Ruth was doing is what she knew to do. She was being herself because she had clarity of who she was. She knew she was a hard worker. She knew she was willing to go all out and do her best for what she wanted to have. And she cared for her mother-in-law. She didn't have to do that. But because she chose to do so, she operated with excellence. When you choose to operate with excellence, God opens up doors for you that you have no idea even exist. I had to learn this lesson as well. So the Book of Ruth sits really deep in my soul because God sent people to help me. And they helped me because they heard how I operated. I have no problem operating in excellence because my name is on the line with everything that I do. And if you read chapter 1, you've read that also. I made a comment that I wish when I was going through my little cycle of learning all these different things to help me get an understanding, my horoscopes, palm reading, all of this stuff, which was useless. It wasn't until I took the time to delve deep into a better understanding of who God is in God's Word that my world got better. And when I finally took the time to understand God as my Redeemer, He sent me help. He sent people to get me to my next level. That reset strategy that I put in place were lessons that I gleaned from the help of others and what God had been walking me through. So with that, let's read chapter 3. One day, Naomi said to Ruth, "My daughter, it's time that I found you a permanent home so that you will be provided for. Boaz is a close relative of ours, and he's been very kind by letting you gather grain with his young women. Tonight he will be winnowing barley at the threshing floor. Now do as I tell you. Take a bath and put on perfume and dress in your nicest clothes. Then go to the threshing floor, but don't let Boaz see you until he has finished eating and drinking. Be sure to notice where he lies down. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down there. He will tell you what to do." "I will do everything you say," Ruth replied. So she went down to the threshing floor that night and followed the instructions of her mother-in-law. After Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he lay down at the far end of the pile of grain and went to sleep. Then Ruth came quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. Around midnight, Boaz suddenly woke up and turned over. He was surprised to find a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she replied. "Spread the corner of your covering over me, for you are my family redeemer." "The Lord bless you, my daughter," Boaz explained. "You are showing even more family loyalty now than you did before, for you have not gone after a younger man, whether rich or poor. Now, don't worry about a thing, my daughter. I will do what is necessary, for everyone in town knows that you are a virtuous woman. But while it's true that I am one of your family's redeemers, there is another man who is more closely related to you than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning I will talk to him. If he is willing to redeem you, very well, let him marry you. But if he is not willing, then as surely as the Lord lives, I will redeem you myself. Now lie down here until morning." So Ruth lay at Boaz's feet until morning, but she got up before it was light enough for people to recognize each other. For Boaz had said no one must know that a woman was here at the threshing floor. Then Boaz said to her, "Bring your cloak and spread it out." He measured 6 scoops of barley into the cloak and placed it on her back. Then he returned to town. When Ruth went back to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "What happened, my daughter?" Ruth told Naomi everything Boaz had done for her, and she added, "He gave me these 6 scoops of barley and said, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Then Naomi said to her, "Just be patient, my daughter. Until we hear what happens, the man won't rest until he has settled things today." So with that chapter, we get deeper into the love story. Boaz, you can tell, was an older man. And Ruth, being a younger woman, even though she was a foreigner, as a young, beautiful woman, you can probably gather some man that wants to have you in his heart. But as a redeemer, he operated in integrity. He operated with grace. One of the things that I share in the book, Red Alert Is He the One, the pocket guide to finding the love of your life, that pocket guide is a pocket guide because I wanted it to be something that's an easy reference. And yes, it's titled Finding the Love of Your Life, but it's not just about a man. You can follow the tools and the tips that I put in there to find a man of integrity, because I lay out in there different scriptures that God guided me through. My husband was a man that covered me. While we were dating, he operated in integrity. and he followed the characteristics of a man of God, just like Boaz did. I share in the book also that God has no problem bringing people together. I did not know God was a matchmaker, so I decided I was going to find out. So I asked God to give me some understanding about the type of man that I needed in my life. Not that I was truly looking for a husband, but I knew I had to learn more than what I knew, because who I was attracting in my dating phase was not who I wanted to continue to be with through the marriage phase. I wasn't ready to get married again, but if I wanted to, the options weren't really there for me. But Boaz showed integrity. He was a man that continued to pay attention to Ruth and recognize her virtue. When you honor yourself, men will honor you. When you are clear about who you are and operating with your personal integrity and not allowing yourself to be used and abused, you will command the respect that you deserve. And a man that truly sees your virtue will honor you in it. Boaz honored Ruth. And as a result, he went going after seeking the proper way to get her hand. Honor yourself, and the man that is in your life will seek the proper way to gather your hand. Now let's read chapter 4. Boaz went to the town gate and took a seat there. Just then the family redeemer he had mentioned came by. So Boaz called out to him, "Come over here and sit down, friend. I want to talk to you." So they sat down together. Then Boaz called 10 leaders from the town and asked them to sit as witnesses. And Boaz said to the family redeemer, "You know Naomi came back from Moab. She is selling the land that belonged to her relative Elimelech. I thought I should speak to you about it so that you can redeem it if you wish. If you want the land, then buy it in the presence of these witnesses. But if you don't want it, let me know right away, because I am next in line to redeem it after you." The man replied, "All right, I'll redeem it." Then Boaz told him, "Of course, your purchase of the land from Naomi also requires that you marry Ruth, the Moabite widow. That way she can have children who will carry on her husband's name and keep the land in the family." "Then I can't redeem it," the family redeemer replied, "because this might endanger my own estate. You redeem the land. I cannot do it." Now in those days it was the custom in Israel for anyone transferring a right of purchase to remove his sandal and hand it to the other party. This publicly validated the transaction. So the other family redeemer drew off his sandal as he said to Boaz, "You buy the land." Then Boaz said to the elders and to the crowd standing around, "You are witnesses that today I have brought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. And with the land I have acquired Ruth, the Moabite widow of Mahlon, to be my wife. This way she can have a son to carry on the family name of her dead husband and to inherit the family property here in his hometown. You are all witnesses today." Then the elders and all the people standing at the gate replied, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make this woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, for whom all the nation of Israel descended. May you prosper in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. And may the Lord give you descendants by this young woman who will be like those of our ancestor Perez, the son of Tamar in Judah." So Boaz took Ruth into his home, and she became his wife. Then he slept with her, and the Lord enabled her to become pregnant, and she gave birth to a son. Then the women of the town said to Naomi, "Praise the Lord, whom has now provided a redeemer for your family. May this child be famous in Israel. May he restore your faith and care in your old age, for he is the son of your daughter-in-law who loves you and has been better to you than 7 sons." Naomi took the baby and cuddled him to her breast, and she cared for him as if he were her own. The neighbor woman said, "Now at last Naomi has a son again," and they named him Obed. He became the father of Jesse and the grandfather of David. This is the genealogical record of their ancestor Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron was the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Amminadab. Amminadab was the father of Nahshon. Nahshon was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz. Boaz was the father of Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse is the father of David. So that is the entire book of Ruth. That last chapter gives you a whole lot of names, but it also shows that God is a God of generations. God intends for us to be blessed, but he also intends for the generations that come behind us to be blessed as well. And the actions that you take today have a direct impact on what happens to your family in the future. Because Boaz was honorable in redeeming Ruth, the same way God is honorable in sending Jesus to redeem us. We are blessed. There are so many promises in the Bible about being a blessing and God blessing us to be a blessing to others. It is just a phenomenal book. There's a whole lot more lessons, and in the future, as I continue and get more insight from everyone about what you would like to hear, I can pull some other elements. But I want to leave you with this about the Book of Ruth. It's a love story about a redeemer. It's a love story that you are worthy. It's a love story that shows that God sees you. If others deem you less than, because as a foreigner, Ruth was deemed less than. But God saw her worthy, and he put her on a platform that no one else could take away. When you take the time to grow in your relationship with yourself, grow in your relationship with God, he will expand your relationship with others and enhance your environment so that your territory is worthy of who you are. Take the time to get to know you better, because Ruth knew who she was. She honored herself, and in return, she was honored. Because Ruth made a deliberate decision to honor the living God, God expanded who she was in the minds of others and let her virtue be seen. Before Boaz got to know her, he heard of her. Before your Boaz will get to know you, he will hear of you. Do what you know God has called you to do. Be who you know you are in the recesses of your soul. Things will go well for you. This simple little book, I think, is a quick synopsis of the entire element of God's love in the Bible. It's small but mighty. People look at God in a small capacity, but he is mighty, mighty to give, mighty to share, mighty to be. And if you want to let certain that your world grows and expands in who God is, it will be mighty in every element that you do. So that's my take on Ruth. I hope you're blessed through the process. If you want to hear a little bit more and translate something a little bit different out of this, let me know. There are numerous elements that can be gleaned from all the books of the Bible. This is just one part. I pray you're blessed through your process. Take care, and I'll see you on the other side.